lighting people, Acuity Brands was recently in the news announcing 3 executive moves, one of which involved Sarah Golish, the previous Senior Vice President of Marketing, and now the person who oversees Acuity Brands' lighting controls business, which in part includes responsibility for Sensor Switch and for Nlight. So we're pleased today to be joined by the new appointed Senior Vice President of Digital Lighting Networks. Sarah, congratulations on your new role, and thank you for joining us today for 5 big questions.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Sarah, you've been involved with Acuity Brands for a long time, and most of that time was under the leadership of Vern Nagel, the previous CEO, who for a long time talked about how Acuity was transforming from a lighting business to a technology business. And it's been a little over a year now since Neil Ashe took over as the new CEO. What types of culture changes or mindset shifts have you seen under Neil's leadership?
So I sort of think of Neil's transition as sort of Vern's plus more. So we're going to go from lighting to a technology company to now we're looking at how do we do something beyond lighting as we go into being an important industrial technology company, all about really helping the environment and our communities. So as I look at Neil and what he's done over the last year, I really think of 2 big things. The first is from his background, he's brought a much more customer-centric focus to the company. It's often easy in a B2B like lighting world to really focus on your channel partners or all those influencers and other people out there. Well, what Neil's brought in is we got to think about the actual person who spends the money and how do we make sure that they are really happy with what we're delivering, and then everything else falls away. So what we've done is we've now taken that mindset, looked at what's possible, the art of the possible, not just incremental changes, and then how do we use technology to really drive and make those improvements for our customer. The second big thing that I've seen Neil do from a culture perspective is all about talent development. The first person that he hired as he started was our chief HR officer, Diane Mills. And with her, we've really started to see a shift to ensure that we're focusing on developing the best people so that we become the best place for those people to work. And so with the pandemic, that's sort of thrown all of that craziness up into the air, but we've really established a couple of key things. First, we've changed our vacation policy, giving people more time off, that ability to have some flexibility. Secondly, we've added to our parental leave policies. And then lastly, instead of 8 to 5, it's all about flexibility, especially in this remote world, it has to be. And so as we look at exiting, whatever that means, the pandemic, we're looking at really putting a hybrid work model in place about, there's people that will have to be there in the facilities, making sure that, our essential work is being done. But then we've got people like engineers who need to be in the office, but not all the time. So let's have this right balance between work and being able to have that flexibility. And then lastly, we're going to have a group of people that are going to be remote. They don't necessarily need to go into the office, and that lets us, as well as our associates, really have a better balance going forward.
Yeah, so Neil did join the company at a very interesting time right before the pandemic started. And then also you'd mentioned one of his first actions being to hire an HR executive. And along those lines, a lot of companies over the last year have been making statements about diversity, equity, and inclusion. What have you seen from Acuity's standpoint, not so much from a statement, but from walking the walk in that area?
So I've been with Acuity just around 5 years, and I really do believe Acuity has that mindset around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have and truly do value that diversity of thought, background, and orientation, and that it drives innovation faster for our company, as well as it allows us to really differentiate ourselves in the market. But in addition to that mindset, we have put a couple of key programs over the last year to ensure that we're really stepping up and taking it to the next step. We have had affinity groups for women and minorities for a couple of years now to ensure that we're providing those resources and that connectivity across the organization. In addition, we put together a standing steering committee to really look at these issues. It involves Diane, as well as our SVP of Architectural Products, Rick Earlywine, as well as others throughout the organization. And it's all about ensuring that we are putting the policies and the processes in place to make ourselves a better company every single day. In addition, we're reviewing our recruiting, our talent, our training policies to ensure that it is and it will be provide that inclusion that we want to ensure that we are focused on. In addition, we have revised our holiday schedule to include Martin Luther King. day. We have increased our focus on the community in terms of allocating funds that do support and work for racial equality. And then lastly, we have a survey coming out shortly to really focus our efforts and really start to score ourselves on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And all of this is about us wrapping up and creating that environment to ensure that we have the best people, and we've created an environment for these people to do their best work.
Sounds like a lot of great actions taking place there to keep driving those initiatives forward. And when we talk about the pandemic again, and I promise we're going to get to digital lighting and lighting controls, but in your previous role, you headed up marketing for this very large company. And the pandemic caused a lot of challenges. In my opinion, I think marketing has always been important, but it became really, really important, maybe more important than ever during the pandemic, since salespeople were sidelined, and now you're relying on the marketing team to reach customers in the absence of some sales activity. So when you look at the pivots that Acuity made, and maybe some of the lasting changes that companies like yours might make in the future as a result of what we've gone through in the last year, how would you summarize those actions?
Yeah. It was actually sort of funny thinking back about the pandemic. I swear, like, marketing and IT became like popular overnight. It was awesome. So my team, we really did almost overnight have to shift people from who are in-person training, our trade shows teams, and really focus on ensuring that we were supporting our sales teams as they were figuring out how to pivot in this virtual world. I think we were pretty lucky. We had tool sets. So we had some pretty strong digital marketing tool sets. And so we have this ability to start to create and allow actually our salespeople, I say, become virtual marketers, although they may disagree with me there. So what we were able to do is we were really able to supercharge our social platforms. We took our virtual training, and I think overnight it like doubled in terms of the total number of users. And then we took a lot of the content that we had and we packaged it for our sellers so that they could actually use their and personalize it so that we could use their connectivity locally and then get our message out that way. All of this actually allowed us to continue to launch new products during this period. And then, to be honest, we actually upped our game in content. So we already had an AR and VR, augmented reality and virtual reality program under works, but we were able to sort of up our game in terms of the types of content, try to help cut through the clutter because it became very cluttered and still is, and then allow that higher end content to really build, to be able to make things even more interesting for our customers. I think it's going to be really interesting from a marketing stance as we go into this post-COVID world, because all of a sudden we're going to have the physical stuff come back. We've gotten better at the virtual stuff. And how does that all layer on top of each other? And how are we going to figure out how do you make actually what wasn't before even better with the new tactics we've got going on?
For sure. Yeah, I'm excited to see how that evolves too. And a lot of it might be driven by customer preferences, where specifiers might be telling us to stay away more than they already have been, because their billable hours are certainly very valuable, and other customer types might also get more used to some of that virtual technology that you mentioned, or virtual marketing methods that you mentioned. So when we look at the landscape for lighting controls, Acuity Brands has a large array of scalable lighting controls, from one-room solutions to smart cities, one-room solutions to smart buildings, and then to smart cities. So when you look at those three components, or those three sectors of the market, which one to you seems to be growing the most? Even though they're all growing, which one is most exciting to you as far as potential growth?
So I started this job like 2 weeks ago. So I'm making sure I'm learning more and more, but actually this is a great question. And I've been having sort of these conversations, debates with my team as I'm starting to really try to dive into the market. For us, it continues to be that standalone room control is the largest segment of the market. And it's going to be really interesting with COVID, because I don't know exactly how it's going to impact everything going forward. But as we look at it, we're seeing huge growth in wireless and embedded controls. And so that sort of signals that, that ease of use, that ability to make it easier for the contractor is going to be sort of prevalent and continue to be into the future. As you look at the future too, that idea of the new construction and whether it's going to happen or not, or are there going to be a lot of spaces that are more renovated or retrofit? starts to really make you think that, at least probably in the shorter term, that standalone, but also that room control is going to be the focus, because there's going to be, renovations to make spaces that exist already more appealing to those as they're starting to go back in them. But obviously the smart buildings and the smart cities, that's going to still continue on. But I think from a growth perspective, in at least the short term, you're still going to see that standalone control, unless all of a sudden some like code or something comes in to upend it all.
Makes sense. And yeah, it's an exciting time for lighting controls over the past many years, and that trajectory still continues at a rapid pace. When we take a step back and look at things maybe a little bit more big picture, and you look at the market opportunity over the next few years, what do you see happening in the lighting control space, and how will Acuity address it?
So for us, as we look at the future, it's a lot about the customer again. And we think customer-centric controls and lighting, and just that customer-centric building is going to be where the future goes. So you had energy efficiency as a key driver. But as we start to look at what's going on in the world right now, everyone expects to be connected. Everyone's homes right now are becoming smarter and smarter. And so as we're looking at the commercial space, we really truly believe that the commercial space, we've got to start to make it more of a consumer grade experience. And so that makes us start to think about, how do we create things with that user and the customer in mind, but how do you start to bring and blend all that together? I think the building and the idea of building automation is also going to shift over time too. For so many years, you've had, your electrical, your HVAC, your mechanic, everything's sort of separate. But if we're really going to create an experience for the customer, some of those things are going to have to start to blend together to start to create true building automation. And then I guess the last thing that we see, and I think a lot of companies are, we're very focused on sustainability and the environment beyond just energy efficiency. And so with a lot of that coming forward, that's going to potentially create that blend as well, because you're going to have to start to look at the whole instead of just looking at each of the pieces in order to really fulfill that promise. So as we look at that, it's really where we think things are going to go, at least from a long-term perspective.
Sarah, really interesting and valuable insights that you offered. So thank you for sharing those. Good luck in your new role. And thank you for joining us today for 5 Big Questions.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here.